I got this great idea. I decided I was going to put on an audition for my dad. And I went into my mother's closet, and I found a basket and a hat, and I went up to the dinner table where my parents were having a nice candlelit dinner, and I launched into my best impression of Aunt Bee. Andy, Barney, there's a big basket of fried chicken and pickles and cornbread. I want you to eat it all up. Don't leave a single crumb. I want everyone to be as plump as me.
That's Aunt Bee.
That's Aunt Bee.
And did he say, oh, that's a dead ringer for Aunt Bee, we're going to take you down to the studio?
He said, I'm sorry, but the part of Aunt Bee has already been cast. But he did let me help cue his lines, which was a big thrill. And I would have a script because he had to memorize a lot of lines because Barney was major in every show. So I would sit there and I would act out the characters, and he would go, no, just do it straight. That throws me off. But I did go with my mother and my brother to the set, and that was very exciting because, of course, we watched the show, and of course, it looks very realistic on TV. But when we got to the set, I said, "Oh my gosh, everything looks real," until you go into one of the stores on the set, and there's nothing inside but cables, lights, and cameras. And I said, "Dad, you have such a gift to make everything fake seem real." And he said, "Well, that's because I have real talent. If you want fake talent, you have to go over to Screen Gems."
You know, I have read, and I'm anxious to read the book because I'm such a fan of the show, such a fan of your dad, and not just from the Andy Griffith Show, but the other things that he did, Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and the great comedies that he did with Tim Conway.
Right.
He had such an extensive career, but he always played this role of a very nervous person. And was that anything like the real Don Knotts?
Well, he had this very, very difficult upbringing. During the Great Depression, they were extremely poor. His older brothers were alcoholics. They had a paranoid schizophrenic father. And so he grew up with that nervousness. And I think, and people ask me, was your dad like Barney Fife? And I say, well, internally, he was, because he was that child inside that. But he overcame all that to become this worldly, sophisticated man who was a movie star. And when people say, was your dad was just like Barney Fife, sometimes they think that he was like Barney Fife. And I say, I don't think that Barney Fife could have carved out the career that my father had.
Not with only one bullet. He could not have done that. No, he would have needed more ammo than that, for sure.
Yes, he would.
I think it's wonderful. Your love for your dad is something that I find charming, because so many times the child of a famous person resents it and feels like that they were cheated because they didn't get the spotlight. That's not where you are. You enjoy going and entertaining people and doing comedy and paying tribute to the father that you loved.
Well, we all have, all children of celebrities or famous people all struggle with their own identity, because people immediately want to associate you with that famous person. And so you have to find a way to break through and have them see me, who I am. But my father was so wonderful. He took me out on the road. He did shows. A lot of people don't know that he did live theater. He was doing theater every year. Whenever he wasn't on TV or film, he was doing theater, legitimate stage, across the Midwest, doing Neil Simon plays and all kinds of funny shows. And he cast me in small parts, and he taught me how to get laughs. And how to, he would listen, and after the show, he would say, Karen, I think if you just gave a little more pause before you say that line, it might get a bigger laugh. And he would usually be right. And sometimes he would say, no, it was better the other way. Go back to the way you were doing it before, or whatever.
Ain't a bad acting teacher to have Don Knotts giving you personal lessons. Right. Well, Karen, I know that everyone's going to want to read this book called Tied Up in Knots by Karen Knotts. You can get the book, and you can find out where you can see her perform at her website. You might want to invite her to your community to do a performance where you are.